Hi everyone, today we are going to do activity number 1, timelines, and first you will be discussing with your group what different ways you can represent the multiplication 6 times 8, but also other values. The materials you will need is a large lime line. It's basically going to be a red construction paper, an arrow, and it's going to say plus limes at the tip of the arrow. You will also have 5 identical kits, and each kit will have 3 different cards. So an example is, if your table is A1, you would have cards E3, E8, and E14. Each table would have different cards, and their construction paper, the color of their construction paper will be different in order for you to distinguish how many groups are in your lime line. And it's important for you to remember that you would have 5 sets and they are all the same cards. So the goal of this game is for your team to place the 3 cards in order of increasing to decreasing number of limes on the lime line or in the arrow. You would begin with a starting card, which the group will provide, and based on the number of limes on your starting card, you will either put your 3 cards to the left or to the right. And remember, it's in order of increasing to decreasing. And so your team will rotate through 5 stations or tables. So after your table is done placing the 3 cards in your lime line, you would go to the other 5 tables. But remember that your group would only have 5 minutes to place the 3 cards into each lime line in each group. But you will be timed and you will be told when to move. So first, as a mentor, you would model the behavior or what you want your students to do. And so with your first card, you will either put it to the left or right, depending on the starting card. So an example of the movement or in what direction your table is going to move in is, if your table is A1, you would go to the A2, A3, 4, and 5. A represents Lathrop and B represents Via. And so these are just some questions that we want you to ask your students so they can be engaged. And remember that during the activity, your role as a mentor is just to ask them questions, make sure that they're participating and not necessarily correcting their mistakes. So an example of what I was saying is that you will begin with an arrow and it would say plus limes on the tip of the card, and you will begin with a starting card, and the starting card would have a number of limes. Now you would have 3 cards aside from the starting card. So in total you should have about 4 cards in your lime line arrow. And if one of your cards states that there is 81 limes, then you will put it to the left of the starting card. So left is lowest number of limes and right is highest number of limes. Now you as a mentor would do one example. So after you finish, there will be a starting card and your card, and then your students would have to place the other 2 cards on the arrow, depending on the relationship, depending on the number of limes that there are. So this is just reiterating what I said. So your group would have 5 minutes to put the 3 cards, which are identical copies of the ones you put in your arrow, in each table. And when you return to your station, you will notice that there would be many cards. There should be a total of 16 cards, including the starting card. And each group would have different colored papers, so you would be able to distinguish how many groups visited your table. If not everyone was able to complete it, that's fine. This is another example relating E9 and E4. So what we want is the students to be able to explain their the relationship. So if E9 has E9 and E4 have the same number of limes, try to see if they can either decrease the number of limes. So E9 had 12 branches and 32 limes, but E4 has 6 branches and 32 pairs of limes. So try to see if the students can decrease E9 to have the same number of branches as E4. So an example of this was that E9 in total had 12 branches, and each circle represents 32 limes. But E4 had 6 branches, and it had 2 groups of 32. So basically we reduced it. This is another example of what your lime line should look like, or what we hope it would look like. And this is just informing you about what kit or what cards you should have depending on your table and what color paper it would be. And these are just examples of the cards you would have. These are the starting cards, and each group will have the same. However, your cards as a team would be different for each group. And this is an example of E3, E8, and E14. There's 81, 32 limes, 2 groups, and 5 branches. And this one has 2 branches and 8 limes per each. So what we want is for the students to multiply in order to find the value, but we also want them to use their reasoning.